All right, so the next section here is advanced deployment scenarios. This is one of my favorite ones because this one is actually sharing some of the content experiences that we have from our partners. Like David and I, we have been working in the marketplace 2+ years, you know, working with partners every single day. And this is where, we can show some of the things that have been done by some partners and, how, you could technically use this in your solution if you're doing something similar. So the one is one of the examples is storage provider. So we have, if you look at the marketplace for the storage companies, and we have a lot of them, and they follow like a pattern on how they use Azure Managed Apps, right? So in the storage provider, they usually have something like a control plane where they control the devices that are going to be used, and there will be a data plane where the data is actually stored. So if you look at a storage provider, especially if you have been working with storage provider for a long time, you see that they usually have a hardware box. But in the cloud, there's no hardware box. They just want to bring that functionality in the cloud. So then the hardware box now actually is in the cloud and provide the same functionality that some of their classic customers are expecting from their technologies. So the money of these storage provider partners are using managed applications, and then they have their VMs most of the time in the control plane, and then they use storage disk from Azure to run their virtual hardware, and then they will have something like uh, the devices, right? So this will be the virtual machines or the system that the customer has, and that then they will connect to the Managed app to access that storage inside Azure using the feature that they're used to, and then they will just do data transfer, IO, and so on. And then with going over the utilization, they use the same meters that we talked today to report that utility, and they store those, they record the reports in a metrics repository, and then of course, they send the meters after they're being aggregated into the marketplace. So this is a very typical pattern of a storage provider, compute devices, control plane, data plane, the disk, data transferred, report the usage, aggregate, and store in a database, and then send the metrics to the marketplace. So that customer can be billed on an hourly base or consumption, of their services. Very, very typical. Another type of partner is the IoT partners, right? So they also have a managed application, just like we talked today. They may have an authorization service and a billing service, just like the storage provider. And then what they happen is they have IoT devices instead of virtual machine. There will be IoT devices, and the IoT devices will, verify first that they're authenticated and they can send data to the managed app, and then the device will report the usage of the technology that they have, and aggregate the data and send the meters back to the marketplace. Again, another very common use of managed app, wrapping that authorization service, the billing service for IoT devices in the field, so they can be charged on a meter base. We do have something called delegate managed identities, and you're gonna, probably will hear about that when you start getting into very complex, which is what I'm bringing here at this level of, and at the end of the session, because it's, not everybody needs to use it, but if you're at this level, you probably may need to know about it. And this is where, you may want to have like a virtual machine that will run some scripts to create resources post deployments, right? So you may want to be able to have a VM that deploys with the managed app, and after deployment, this VM has to have specific permissions to be able to execute the scripts. So like, I need to create more additional disks. I need to create, some other resource, Azure functions. So that VM no resource can actually create anything without the appropriate permission. So this is something that you should definitely look into it. But here's an example for you to see where the managed identity will be in place. So this is a snippet of an ARM template. You have a type of role assignments. And this, this will be a resource group, and we'll tell you that it depends on user managed identities. These are the properties, and here is the key piece on how this managed identity gets set up and the principal ID associated with it. In some cases, the actual user may have to provide this identity, and the identity will be the one that technically that VM will impersonate to do the job. Okay, so, and then another pattern that I'm seeing commonly is there will be customers that need billing on an already AKS cluster. So we don't support AKS like we talked before. We don't support ACI. But if a customer have an Kubernetes cluster and you as a publisher, you want to use a Kubernetes cluster to deploy your technologies, and then you want to be able to charge those containers, the way that it works is, you will have a virtual machine with some container registry or some binary of containers. You will have an authorization service, billing service, and then you can send or pull those containers from the Kubernetes service cluster. You can bring those containers to the Kubernetes service or cluster, or move it to a customer private registry. So your containers in that managed app, you can move them into the container registry, and then you execute the images. And once the images are running, right, they're pulled and up and running, then that container will then notify of it will get an authorization and then send the usage of the container itself. And of course, once it's aggregated in the metrics repo, you send the metrics to the marketplace on an hourly basis. Okay. So, David, I think this slide is yours, actually. I'll give that to you.
All right. I'll grab it. Okay. Custom resources and resources providers. This is something that a lot of folks are interested in, and we're going to see how it works. It's a way to declare resources of your own as though they. Oh, am I projecting?
I am projecting. I'm not sure.
Yeah, something's wrong with projection here. I don't have my screen up. It doesn't look like. Let me share it.
I see it now. Oops.